The rain came down in sheets, a cold, relentless curtain that blurred the Raleigh skyline as Ellie Harper's taxi pulled up to her home on Willow Street. She was 67, her joints stiff from the long flight from Oregon, where she'd spent a week with her sister, reminiscing over old photos and laughing about their childhood in the Blue Ridge Mountains. But now, as the cab's headlights cut through the dusk, Ellie's heart seized. Her life, 33 years of it, was strewn across the sidewalk like garbage. Her armchair, the one Thomas had loved, sat sodden in the downpour. Her books, her porcelain figurines, even her wedding album were piled in haphazard stacks, some already ruined by the rain. "What in God's name?" Ellie's voice cracked as she fumbled with her purse, her hands trembling. The driver, a young man with a bored expression, glanced over. "You need help, ma'am?" No, just wait." She shoved a crumpled 20 into his hand and stumbled out, her sensible loafers slipping on the wet pavement. A piece of paper taped to a cardboard box fluttered in the wind. Ellie snatched it, her eyes scanning the sharp, hurried scrawl. "If you want to stay, we have the garage. Your loving daughter-in-law, Lauren." The words hit like a slap. Lauren. Her son Daniel's wife, the woman who'd once called her mom with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. Ellie's chest tightened as she turned toward the house. Her house, the one she and Thomas had bought in 1992, where they'd raised Daniel, where they danced in the kitchen to Sinatra on rainy nights like this. The porch light was off, the windows dark except for a faint glow in the living room. She pulled out her phone, her fingers shaking as she dialed the bank. "Yes, this is Eleanor Harper. Account ending in 4729. I need to confirm my mortgage payment." The hold music droned as rain soaked her coat, her gray hair plastered to her face. The banker's voice was crisp. "Yes, ma'am, your payment of $2,143.00 was processed on the 1st. Everything's current." Ellie's knees buckled. She was still paying for the house. Every month, like clockwork, she'd sent the money, even after Thomas's death 18 months ago. Even after she'd signed the deed over to Daniel and Lauren, a decision made in grief to help them build their future. She'd kept paying, secretly, to ease their burden, to keep the home that held her heart, and now, this. The garage door was ajar, a sliver of light spilling onto the driveway. Ellie pushed it open, her breath catching at the sight. A bare mattress on the concrete floor, a cheap lamp casting harsh shadows, and boxes labeled Ellie's stuff in Lauren's unmistakable hand. Her clothes hung on a metal rack, her photo albums and Thomas's old fishing trophies stuffed into crates. It wasn't a home, it was a storage unit, a prison. She sank onto the mattress, the cold seeping through her damp skirt. Through the garage's small window, she could see the house, the warm glow of the living room where she'd once rocked Daniel to sleep. Her phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. "Mom, we need space. Lauren wants a studio. The garage has what you need." Ellie's vision blurred with tears. She'd stayed up nights for Daniel's asthma attacks, driven him to college tours, worked double shifts at the library to pay his tuition. And now, this betrayal. The rain drummed harder, a cruel echo of her racing pulse. Ellie's life on Willow Street had been a tapestry of small, sacred moments. The house, a modest 2-story craftsman with a wraparound porch, was a Raleigh relic, bought when the city was still sleepy, before the tech boom sent property values soaring. She and Thomas had scraped together the down payment, their hands calloused from years of teaching and carpentry. They'd painted the walls sage green, planted azaleas, and carved their initials into the oak tree out back. Daniel had grown up here, his laughter filling the halls, his muddy sneakers tracking dirt across the hardwood. But Thomas's death had unraveled everything. A heart attack at 64, sudden and merciless, left Ellie adrift. Daniel, then 35, had stepped in, his wife Lauren at his side, promising to care for the house. "We'll keep it in the family, Mom," he'd said, his eyes soft. So Ellie signed it over, a gift born of love and trust. She'd never told them she kept paying the mortgage, wiring the money from her meager pension and savings. It was her way of holding on, of ensuring the house stayed theirs, hers. The signs of exclusion had been subtle at first. Last Christmas, Lauren had moved Ellie's armchair to the basement, claiming it clashed with her new decor. Ellie's suggestions for repainting the kitchen were met with tight smiles and vague promises. Lauren, a graphic designer with a penchant for minimalist aesthetics, had started dropping hints about senior living communities. "They have activities, Ellie. You'd make friends." When Ellie mentioned her volunteer work at the local nursing home, Lauren scoffed. "You're not a nurse. Why bother?" Now, standing in the garage, Ellie saw it clearly, a calculated erasure. Her life, her memories, reduced to boxes and a mattress. She clutched her phone, her thumb hovering over Daniel's number, but instead dialed Susan Carter, her friend of 28 years. Susan's voice was warm, steady. "Ellie, what's wrong?" "They've thrown me out," Ellie whispered, her voice breaking. "My things. They're in the garage." "Stay there," Susan said. "I'm coming." 15 minutes later, Susan's silver Honda pulled up. She was 70, wiry and fierce, her white hair cropped short. She took one look at the sidewalk pile and cursed under her breath. "Those ungrateful—" "Come on, you're staying with me." Susan's house in North Raleigh was a cozy bungalow, cluttered with books and quilts. Over cups of chamomile tea, Ellie poured out the story, the note, the garage, Daniel's text. Susan's eyes narrowed. "Lauren's been talking at the book club. She and Daniel are planning to sell your house, buy some fancy property in Willow Creek. They think it's a done deal." Ellie's stomach churned. Willow Creek was Raleigh's new darling, a gated community with million-dollar homes and manicured lawns. Her house, worth maybe $600,000, 0 cents in today's market, was a stepping stone for their ambition. "That house is Thomas," she said, her voice trembling. "It's Daniel's childhood. It's me." Susan leaned forward, her voice low. "You're still paying the mortgage. That's leverage. Stop the payments. Let them scramble." Ellie hesitated. Stopping the payments could tank their credit, maybe even force a foreclosure, but it felt like sabotage, a betrayal of her own. "I don't know if I can." "Then fight another way," Susan said. "My nephew Kevin's a lawyer, specializes in elder rights. He'll know what to do." Kevin arrived the next morning, a lanky 40-year-old with a kind smile and a briefcase stuffed with legal pads. Over coffee, he listened as Ellie recounted the deed transfer and her secret payments. "You've got something here," he said, tapping his pen. "Your payments could imply a verbal contract, an expectation you'd stay in the home. North Carolina law recognizes that. We can argue they've breached it by locking you out." Ellie's heart lifted, then sank. A lawsuit meant fighting her own son. "I need to talk to them first," she said. "I have to try." The next day, Ellie stood on her own porch, feeling like a stranger. The azaleas were gone, replaced by sleek potted succulents. She rang the bell, her pulse hammering. Lauren answered, her blonde hair pulled into a tight bun, her expression a mix of surprise and annoyance. "Ellie, what are you doing here?" "I need to talk," Ellie said, stepping inside before Lauren could protest. The living room was unrecognizable, the sage walls now stark white, Thomas's photos gone, replaced by abstract art. A pang shot through her. "Where's Daniel?" Lauren crossed her arms. He's at work. Look, we didn't expect you back so soon. I know about Willow Creek, Ellie cut in, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. I know you're selling my home, and I know I've been paying the mortgage. Lauren's eyes widened, but she recovered quickly, her lips curling into a smirk. Your home? Ellie, you gave it to us. It's ours now. Daniel's voice came from the stairs. Mom? He descended, his face a mix of guilt and defiance. At 37, he looked like Thomas. Same broad shoulders, same hazel eyes. But there was a hardness now, a distance. Why didn't you tell us you were coming? Why didn't you tell me you were selling my life out from under me? Ellie shot back. I paid for this house, Daniel, every month for you. He flinched, but held his ground. We were going to tell you after the sale. We thought it'd be easier. Easier? Ellie's voice rose, cracking with anger. You throw my things on the street. You put me in the garage like I'm some old furniture you don't want. Lauren stepped forward, her tone icy. 33 years, Ellie? That's a long time to cling to a house. It's sentimental nonsense. We're building a future here. Daniel's studio, my career? You should be in a senior community, playing bingo, not holding us back. Ellie's hands clenched. This house is Thomas. It's your childhood, Daniel. How can you let her erase that? Daniel looked away, his jaw tight. It's legally ours, Mom. You signed it over. We're doing what's best for us. Best for you? Ellie's voice broke. I stayed up nights when you couldn't breathe. I worked 2 jobs for your college. And now I'm nothing to you? Lauren rolled her eyes. Don't guilt trip him. You're not helpless. The garage is perfectly fine. It's a cage, Ellie snapped. And I won't let you sell my home without a fight. I know my rights. Daniel's face paled. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm not done here, Ellie said, turning for the door. You'll hear from me. Back at Susan's, Ellie sat on the guest bed, staring at a photo of Thomas and Daniel fishing at Lake Johnson. Her anger had cooled into resolve. Kevin's words echoed. A verbal contract, a breach, a chance to fight. But the cost was steep, not just money, but the fracture of her family. She thought of Lauren's smirk, Daniel's silence. They'd made their choice, now she'd make hers. Susan knocked softly. You okay? Ellie nodded, her voice firm. Call Kevin. I'm ready. The rain had stopped, but a storm was coming. Ellie Harper wasn't going anywhere, not without a fight. The air in Ellie Harper's former living room crackled with tension, the sterile white walls amplifying the silence that followed her bombshell. Rain pattered against the windows of the Raleigh Craftsman, a relentless drumbeat underscoring the standoff. Ellie, 67, stood resolute, her gray hair damp from the drizzle outside, her eyes locked on her son Daniel and his wife Lauren. She'd just dropped the grenade. I've stopped paying the mortgage. Lauren's perfectly manicured hand flew to her chest, her face paling. You what? Her voice was a sharp hiss, the kind that could cut glass. Do you have any idea what that'll do to our credit, to our future? Daniel, his hazel eyes wide with shock, stepped forward, his broad shoulders tense. Mom, this is sabotage. You're trying to ruin our plans for Willow Creek, aren't you? After everything we've done for you? Ellie's heart twisted, but she held her ground, her voice steady despite the ache. Everything you've done? You threw my life on the sidewalk, Daniel. You put me in the garage. And you think Tomas would be proud of you for selling his home? He'd be ashamed. The mention of his father hit Daniel like a physical blow. His jaw tightened, and for a moment, Ellie thought she saw a flicker of guilt. But Lauren stepped between them, her eyes blazing. "Don't you dare bring Thomas into this. This house is ours. You signed it over. You can't just waltz in and play the victim because you're too sentimental to move on." Ellie's hands clenched, her nails biting into her palms. Sentimental? This is my life. 33 years, Lauren. I raised your husband here. I paid for this house, even after I gave it to you, and now you're selling it for some gated McMansion over my dead body. Daniel's voice was low, almost a growl. "You're making a mistake, Mom. You can't win this." Ellie met his gaze, her resolve hardening. "Watch me." Back at Susan Carter's bungalow, Ellie sank into the guest room's quilted bed, her body heavy with exhaustion, but her spirit alight with a fire she hadn't felt in years. The confrontation had left her raw, her heart fractured by Daniel's betrayal, but there was something else now. A strength, a clarity. She wasn't the grieving widow who'd signed away her home in a fog of loss. She was Eleanor Harper, and she was done being invisible. Susan knocked softly, her white hair glowing in the lamplight. "You okay, Ellie?" Ellie managed a small smile. "Broken, but stronger, somehow." Susan sat beside her, her eyes sharp. "You shook them up good, but stopping the mortgage? That's a risky move. You need to be ready for the fallout." The next morning, Kevin, Susan's lawyer nephew, arrived with a thermos of coffee and a stack of legal pads, his lanky frame folded into a chair as he laid out the stakes. "Your payments give you a claim, Ellie. North Carolina recognizes verbal contracts, especially with family, but if the bank flags those missed payments, it could hit your credit too, unless we file for an equitable lien now. That'd tie your contributions to the house, maybe block the sale." Ellie's stomach churned. A lien sounded like a lifeline, but the idea of her credit, her financial lifeline at 67, taking a hit was terrifying. What if they fight back? Kevin's eyes were steady. They will, but you've got evidence. 22 months of payments, post-transfer. That's not nothing. Susan, leaning against the doorway, grinned wickedly. "If they try anything funny, I've got my old baseball bat. We could take a little trip to Willow Street, grab your stuff back. Make a scene?" Ellie laughed despite herself, the image of Susan wielding a bat absurdly comforting. But the humor faded as her phone buzzed with a voicemail from Michael Grant at First Carolina Bank. His voice was calm but urgent. "Mrs. Harper, we've noticed your recent payment history, 22 months since the deed transfer. We need to discuss your account. Please call or visit." The First Carolina Bank branch on Glenwood Avenue was a sleek, modern building, its glass facade reflecting Raleigh's burgeoning skyline. Inside, Michael Grant, a bespectacled man in his 50s, greeted Ellie with a firm handshake. His office smelled of coffee and leather, a stark contrast to the chaos of her life. "Mrs. Harper, your situation is unusual," he began, sliding a folder across his desk. "You've paid $47,146.00 toward the mortgage since the deed changed hands. That's significant." Ellie's pulse quickened. "Can I use that to stop them from selling?" Michael leaned back, his expression thoughtful. "Possibly. We could propose an equitable lien, tying your payments to the property. It wouldn't give you ownership outright, but it could prevent a sale without compensating you for your contributions. The catch? You'd need to file soon before they secure a buyer." Ellie nodded, her mind racing. A lien could buy her time, maybe even force Daniel and Lauren to negotiate. But the bank's involvement added a new layer of pressure. If the mortgage went into default, the house could slip into foreclosure, a nightmare for everyone. As she left the bank, her phone pinged with a text from Daniel. "Mom, what's this about the mortgage? Payments stopped? We need to talk, now." Ellie's fingers hovered over the screen. She wanted to scream, to demand why he'd let Lauren erase her from their lives. Instead, she typed, "Meet me at Kevin's office. Bring Lauren tomorrow, 10 a.m. She hit send, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and defiance. To clear her head, Ellie applied for a job at Maggie's Diner, a Raleigh institution known for its greasy spoon charm and loyal clientele. At 67, she hadn't waited tables since college, but the idea of independence, of earning her own way, lit a spark. Maggie, a no-nonsense woman with a smoker's rasp, hired her on the spot. "You've got grit," she said, tossing Ellie an apron. "Start tomorrow." The work was grueling. Ellie's feet ached after 8-hour shifts, her hands raw from scrubbing plates. But the tips, modest as they were, $20, 0 cents here, $10, 0 cents there, felt like victories. The diner's regulars, from construction workers to retirees, welcomed her with stories and smiles. For the first time in months, Ellie felt seen. She wasn't just Daniel's mom or Tomas's widow. She was Ellie, the waitress with a quick laugh and a knack for remembering orders. One evening, as she wiped down tables, the bell above the door jingled. Daniel stood there, his face haggard, his suit rumpled. The diner fell quiet, the regulars sensing trouble. "Mom," he said, his voice low. "We need to talk." Ellie straightened, her apron stained with coffee. "Here? Now?" He nodded, sliding into a booth. "You're killing us with this mortgage stunt. The bank's breathing down our necks. Just start paying again. We'll figure it out." Ellie's eyes narrowed. "Figure it out? Like you figured out putting my life in the garage?" Daniel's face flushed. "We're offering you a way out. There's a senior community in Cary. Nice place, activities, the works. You can quit this job." He gestured at the diner, his tone dripping with disdain. "We'll cover the deposit." Ellie's blood boiled. "You want to pay me off, shove me into some retirement home so you can sell my house?" "No, Daniel, I want my home back." His eyes darkened. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. If you keep this up, you won't see Sophie anymore." The mention of her 4-year-old granddaughter was a knife to the heart. Ellie adored Sophie. Her giggles, her crayon drawings, the way she called her Nana. "You'd use her against me," she whispered, her voice trembling. Daniel leaned forward, his voice cold. "I'm doing what's best for my family. Think about it." The meeting at Kevin's office was a powder keg. Ellie sat across from Daniel and Lauren, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Kevin, calm and professional, outlined the lien proposal. Ellie's $47,146.00 in payments entitled her to a claim on the house, potentially blocking the sale. Lauren's face was a mask of fury, her arms crossed so tightly her knuckles whitened. Daniel, meanwhile, looked cornered, his eyes darting between Ellie and Kevin. "You can't do this," Lauren snapped. "The house is ours. You gave it to us." "I gave it to you because I trusted you." Ellie shot back. "I paid for it because I loved you, and you betrayed me." DeDrain's voice was strained. "Mom, we didn't mean for it to go this far. But Willow Creek, it's our future. You're standing in the way." Ellie leaned forward, her voice fierce. "I'm not standing in your way. I'm standing up for myself. I propose this. I buy the house back. I'll pay off the remaining mortgage, $180,000, 0 cents. You keep the equity from my payments, but the house stays mine." Lauren laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "You? With what money? You're a waitress." Ellie's eyes blazed. "I'm not invisible anymore. This is my home, and I'm taking it back." The room fell silent. Kevin slid a draft agreement across the table, detailing the lien and Ellie's offer. Daniel's hands shook as he read it. Lauren's composure cracked, her voice rising. "This is insane. We're so close to Willow Creek, and you're ruining it." "You ruined it," Ellie said quietly, "when you threw me out." Daniel's voice was barely audible. "We can't sell with a lien. The bank won't let us." Kevin nodded. "Exactly, and missed payments are already hitting your credit. Accept Ellie's offer or risk losing everything." Lauren stormed out, slamming the door. Daniel lingered, his eyes meeting Ellie's. "I didn't want this, Mom." "Then make it right," she said. The next 3 months were a legal gauntlet. Kevin filed the lien, and the bank froze the sale. Daniel and Lauren, desperate to salvage their credit, agreed to Ellie's buyback, though not without venom. Ellie secured a loan with Michael's help, using her pension and diner savings as collateral. The paperwork was grueling, the court dates nerve-wracking, but Ellie pushed through, fueled by a purpose she hadn't known she possessed. On a crisp October morning, Ellie stepped back into her home on Willow Street. The house had changed. Gray paint, modern fixtures, Lauren's sterile aesthetic. But its bones were the same. The oak tree still stood, Thomas and Ellie's initials carved deep. She ran her fingers over the wood, tears stinging her eyes. Susan arrived that evening with a pot of chicken noodle soup and a bottle of Merlot. "To your homecoming," she said, raising a glass. They sat on the porch, the air thick with the scent of fallen leaves, and Ellie felt a peace she'd thought was lost forever. She spent weeks restoring the house's warmth, Thomas's photos back on the walls, his fishing rods in the corner. Colorful quilts draped over the furniture, the azaleas returned, their roots sinking into the soil like a promise. Maggie and the diner regulars pitched in, bringing casseroles and laughter, turning the house into a home again. One afternoon, as Ellie planted roses in the front yard, a car pulled up. Daniel stepped out, his face weary. Behind him, Sophie waved from her car seat, a newborn sibling asleep beside her. "Hey, Mom," he said, his voice tentative. Ellie stood, brushing dirt from her hands. "Daniel." He shifted, uncomfortable. "We lost Willow Creek. Couldn't afford it after everything. We're in an apartment now. It's small, but it's home." Ellie nodded, her heart a tangle of sorrow and resolve. "I'm sorry it came to this." He looked at the house, his eyes distant. "You chose this place over us." "No," Ellie said, her voice firm. "I chose myself." Daniel's face softened just for a moment. "Can Sophie still visit?" Ellie smiled, her eyes on her granddaughter. "Always." That night, Ellie hosted a backyard gathering. Susan, Maggie, Kevin, and a dozen diner regulars filled the space with chatter and laughter. Lanterns glowed, casting warm light over the oak tree. Ellie stood on the porch, a glass of wine in hand, watching the scene. She was 67, a waitress, a fighter, a woman who'd reclaimed her life. The house was hers again, not just the walls, but the memories, the love, the strength. As the stars emerged over Raleigh, Ellie closed her eyes, the weight of the past lifting. She was home, and she was whole.